Welcome to the studio at That Nerd Show. I'm Marcus Blake, and today we are speaking with director Cameron Mitchell for his film, Disposable Humanity. And we do want to give a warning to our viewers that the subject matter is maybe graphic and tough to hear. So if now's the time to look away, but we also encourage you to stick out this interview because it's a subject matter that does need to be talked about in this day and age. Welcome, Cameron, to That Nerd Show. As you can tell, we are the nerd news outlet who loves film. Um, so we want to dive right in and talk about your film, Disposable Humanity, and dealing with eugenics and the euthanasia projects of Nazi Germany and how all that started. Um, so first, how did this project come to you? What got you involved in wanting to do this film?
Sure, yeah. I've been, a film nerd my whole life, pretty much. So a fitting show for me to be on. I first went to a gas chamber. My first gas chamber that I saw in person was in Bernburg, Germany, when I was about 9 years old. My folks are professors and filmmakers and took me along and my sister. Those were our version of a family trip. They wanted, and they would take us all over the world. And one of the places they took us was Bernburg, and when they were making their film, A World Without Bodies. And it's also kind of like home movie material that we use in the film Disposable Humanity. You can see me at 9 years old and my sister at 7 with them there. And so, this has kind of been a part of my life's work. I went to film school, made several short films, uh, got into Slam. This will be my third time at Slamdance, my first feature. So really excited I get to premiere my first feature at Slamdance because it's been a huge part of my career, launching it creatively as a director. And, when I first went to Bernburg, the first thing I did is I sat down and I started drawing myself and my family as mouse characters,
Right.
like in Art Spiegelman's graphic novel series. And I think that artistic inclination just stayed with me. And when I became a filmmaker in college, it was still calling to me. And so after I graduated, I approached my dad and said, I want to go back and I want to film at all six of the T4 centers and make a documentary about the entire Action T4 program, which for history buffs, World War II history buffs, it's really a huge critical missing
Yeah.
piece of the history. It actually is the program that created the gas chamber, and trained the killing staff that was used at death camps.
Yeah.
The also T4 staff designed the Auschwitz, Sobibor, Treblinka through Operation Reinhardt. So there's a ton of history in here that you're going to be like, I can't believe I missed this, and I,
Yeah.
can't believe I never uncovered it in a textbook.
Well, and see, that's the thing. I mean, if it's a good school, they're going to teach about the Holocaust. I wish that we lived in a day and age where we have to say that. I mean, John can tell you being in Texas and everything. I mean, we had a school district. Our teacher came under fire not too long ago because the school board wanted her to teach two versions of the Holocaust. And we're like, yeah, I mean, in fairness, there is, but one of them is wrong. And if you believe in that, you're a horrible person. But
Are you talking about the version where it didn't happen?
yeah, yeah, it's that kind of deniability. But where it all started in Nazi Germany, you're right, it does not get talked about. And I had forgotten about the T4 program until I got the notes about this documentary and then watched it. Um, when did you first learn about it?
So when I was 9,
That
and
was when you
we
were 9? Yeah.
yeah, and my folks are scholars of disability studies. They're professors, and they were presenting on the history of American eugenics at a conference in Germany. And somebody in the audience stood up and said, "Do you know they did this not far from here?" And so, being researchers and investigators, we all went to Bernberg and started filming. And that was, it was kind of that inclination of like, we have to go show this to other people because
Right.
they don't know, and that's not by accident. There's the you really have to watch the film to understand the full picture of
Yeah.
how we arrive in the 21st century without an understanding of T4. But it kind of happens in layers, and through decades. And there are several reveals in the film of information that's never been spoken aloud or heard before. And it's all just because we went with a camera and we asked the right questions.
Well, and I think that's part of, when you look at history and you are dealing with talking about the Holocaust, it is kind of a bigger picture, but the seedlings to where it really started. Here was something that I had forgotten until I watched your documentary about when Hitler actually learned about eugenics, when he got the book in prison, and then incorporated into Mein Kampf. And from a pop culture standpoint, the only when we talk about this kind of stuff, we think of it in sci-fi terms of creating super soldiers and whatnot, but we don't talk enough about where these ideas really began and how dictators really used them, and then Hitler in the final solution. Um, in the process of doing this documentary, did you discover that there were a lot more people that didn't understand this part of history as well? I mean, because I don't even know of any textbooks that talk about it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think, as disabled people, we centered the narrative from a disability perspective, and that's what changes the telling of the story of the Holocaust is once you understand that Nazis were eugenicists and that they were inspired by Americans. We had our own sterilization programs that they cited in the passage of their sterilization law, which was the second law that was passed once Hitler came to power on July 14th, 1933. They
Yeah.
passed the law for the sterilization of the hereditarily diseased. And so it really just changes your perspective on how they saw, for instance, medicine as applied to the body of the Volk, the
Yeah.
body of the people. It was this misapplication, like a macro application of medicine, as if you were to amputate the limb of an entire nation, an infected limb, so to speak. And to know that that came, like that they cited California,
Yeah.
20,000 sterilizations during the sterilization period in the United States, that mostly targeted the Latina population
Oh, yeah.
and the immigrant population, and that there were 60,000 sterilizations statewide in the United States,
Yeah.
or countrywide. It really starts to put into perspective the American role in Nazism, and how we inspired in turn the Nazis.
Well, yeah. See, now we're dealing with a part of history that some Americans don't want to admit really happened, in that, America has its own demons. So it may be the land of the free and, the great thing of, experiment of democracy, yada, yada, yada. But we have that dark past in ourselves. Um, people who have watched this film, have you had people try to debate you that Germany didn't really get that from America?
No, because we're experts that have deeply researched this topic and we have the information to support it. And really, as a director, I made sure in the film that the evidence that we presented was irrefutable and that it covered all of the bases. So it's a heavily detailed film.
It
Uh,
is very much so.
And if you're looking for it, you will find the layers and layers of information it's baked into the film itself. I shot the film on Zeiss Jena lenses, which were manufactured in Leipzig, Germany, during the 1930s. So this is a film that very much is how people would have seen themselves in photography, literally
Right.
shot through the lens that was manufactured during that time. And for camera nerds, Zeiss Jena was something that formed, as a result of the separation of Germany. And on the other side of the wall, so to speak. And so there's just layers and layers and layers in this film. Um,
Well, I ask the question because I always find it interesting, when it doesn't matter how much evidence you throw in front of people, they just absolutely refuse to believe and want to argue with you that it didn't happen. And at that point, you're like, well, I mean, how many facts, what is it going to really take for you to be convinced? And some people just don't want to.
Yeah, well, I think what's incredible about the film is that there are artifacts that we show that have never been seen before on film until
Yeah.
this film. Destroyed doors of crematoria ovens that were sitting in black boxes in, for instance, the Hartheim Castle,
Yeah.
until archaeologists came along and asked the right questions and started examining them. And what you learn is that they transferred the ovens from T4 centers to death camps.
Yeah.
And that's important to us coming from the perspective of disabled filmmakers to understand how T4 influenced the Holocaust.
Yeah.
It didn't occur in a vacuum. No one ever thinks to ask, how did the gas chamber arrive? How did the final solution arrive? This film is the answer to that question.
Have because I mean we're, two or three generations removed from World War II at this point. Have you had younger generations have a chance to see this film and start to know more of the history?
Well, the film hasn't premiered yet. So
Okay.
we're about to have that experience, on the 21st, the 20th and 21st. World premieres at 7:15 p.m. On the 20th at the Quixote, West Hollywood. And then there's a second screening on the 21st at 5:30. And I know there are a lot of students that are going to be coming to that one because it's a Saturday. And so we're looking forward to those conversations. I think the younger generations are the key to unearthing this. Actually, that's what T4 teaches you, is that it's not the first generation or the second generation that can even speak about it because of generational trauma. It's actually the third and fourth generation
Right.
that comes back and asks the right questions to be able to, unearth the story and the history.
Um, this year is the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. We just got through celebrating, remembering the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Uh, did you purposely want the film to come out this year and celebrate, or was it just a different timing factor?
Time works in funny ways. This film is very much has a time machine function. We kind of leap throughout moments in the past and into the present. And we like to say history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Right.
And so I think that just being in this area and in this space, um, historians know something, and it just so happens that there are reverberations that are still creeping around and growing stronger and feigning at different times. For instance, just the saying "the apple doesn't fall far from the tree," that's actually a eugenicist statement. So that I think that displays how embedded eugenics is in our culture, and we don't even realize it at times. So we need historians, we need filmmakers, we need artists that show interest in these
Yeah.
seemingly random periods of time, right? Like the director of The Brutalist just cited this, that we needed to lean into filmmakers because
Yeah.
they're the only ones that can bring these stories to life. And so, yeah, the timing is just what it is.
Well, I also think too that films like this are important for fictional, filmmakers who are making fictional stories or allegories with their characters saying this is where it came about. So again, I'll bring up Star Trek. Like this is that history of eugenics with Khan, that it's a very real thing. This is why he's a bad guy and it keeps coming back around. Um, so uh Slam Dance is where it's premiering. Where are you off to next?
And I think culturally, just I want to comment on that really quick. X-Men too, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, I actually got a chance to speak to Spike Lee, or sorry, it's Spike, not yeah,
Stanley.
yeah, different Spike. Uh, and I got a chance to speak to Spike, and I asked him, was X-Men inspired by the civil rights movement, because it came out during the 60s. At that time there was a lot going on. Of course, he was very humble, and said that at that he just had hands in Spider-Man, and then by that point had almost turned it over to a team of creators.
Yeah.
uh, but I think it's kind of undeniable that X-Men deals with these issues of disability, and I love reading disability onto X-Men and onto other graphic novels, because I think it's it plays a huge part in what makes it interesting.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I agree. When are you taking this film to Europe?
So we are, you can't talk about that yet. We're in the process of waiting to hear about our international premieres. But we do plan to take it to Europe, and it will go to Europe and hopefully all around the world. The project has actually shown bits and pieces in New Delhi, India, in Marseille, France. We had a conference in New Auckland, or in Auckland, New Zealand. Like, we've showed these 5-10 minute teasers and did talks, and so all of these audiences are ready for the feature film. So after the festival circuit, there also is going to be an academic circuit for the film as well, because the film itself is research, and I do believe it's going to inspire and add to the cumulative of research around disability studies and Action T4 and the Holocaust.
I agree. I agree. All right. Well, I guess we'll just have to come back around and interview you again after multiple premieres. So, but we understand some things are under embargo and you can't talk about yet. So I am going to get to our famous nerdy question that we ask all of our filmmakers before I completely run out of time. So here you go. If you could have a superpower or a weapon of choice from within the nerd universe to fight the forces of evil, what would you choose? And you can have more than one.
I think I got to go with talk about X-Men, Professor X. I got to go with that ability to enter people's minds, because I think as a filmmaker, that's in a way what I'm trying to do is to use film as a vehicle for empathy and for understanding different perspectives. And I think that power, if I had that power, I could just project, my visions for what the world could be into everyone, and it would just make the job a lot easier.
Yeah, I totally agree. Gosh, if we only had that power during elections. So, well, it was a phenomenal film. I ended up watching it twice. But I also want to give our audience, who see this, it is a hard film, but you need to watch it, and you need to come away asking questions and wanting to know more. This is how you change society for the better. So, um, but thank you very much for interviewing with us. Good luck with the film. I hope that the audience get bigger and bigger, and that there is more and more discussion about this, and it does absolutely become a cautionary tale of when some idiot out there starts preaching eugenics. I'm like, we've seen this before in history, and no. So anyway,
Yeah.
thank you very much. All right, I'm
Oh,
gonna
yeah,
close that.
that's happening currently. So we really need to see this film, and we need to remember that resistance begins in education and
Yeah,
knowledge and knowing. So yeah, look forward to seeing everyone at the world premiere, and then eventually, hopefully, on a streamer.
yeah. Earlier, I wasn't actually kidding. There was a town in the Metroplex where John and I are at who dealt with the subject of like a teacher protested the school board who wanted them to teach two versions of the Holocaust. And she wouldn't do it and then got suspended. And then there was a whole protest. And it was literally it's in a place called South Lake, which is a very, very not progressive area, rich, white, Christian area of Dallas. And I tell people that this actually happened, and they're like, no, it didn't really happen. I'm like, no, no, no. The school board wanted you to teach two versions of the Holocaust.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for me, it's not surprising because, having been to Poland, there's a lot of Holocaust denial
Yeah,
around in it's really unfortunate. But I think it's important to ask questions and to remember that you need to see, the evidence. You need to see
yeah,
the information in order to make a decision. And that it's not kind of up to our personal feelings about something,
right.
whether they're true or not.
Well,
So,
that's the reason we still have places like Auschwitz, so you can go there and see, yeah, this really happened. And this is why we can't let something like this happen again. So,
and
but
that's
yeah,
so important. And Germany has really taught us, because America does not practice memorialization like Germany does.
yeah,
Uh, they have these things called Stoppelstein, which are stumbling stones, and you're
yeah,
supposed to kind of stumble upon the past. They're embedded in the sidewalks, and they have information of victims, how what years they lived and where they ended, where they were from.
yeah.
Uh,
I think one of my favorite lines from the movie Valkyrie, and you can say what you want about Tom Cruise and all that, but I like Kenneth Branagh's character in there when he, when he's telling them this, like, we have to let the world know that not all of us were like him. We have to constantly be reminded and let them see that people did stand up and all that. So here in America, there's a lot of denying of our history that this didn't really happen. I'm like, no, you have to know all the good and the bad, so you don't keep repeating it.
Yeah,
So
and we need entertaining films and media that continually renew and make the subject even more interesting. So that's what I hope that this film does, is it brings this period of history to life.